Welcome to your second video in the Gilded Age unit. In this video, we're going to be talking about the political and economic challenges that the U.S. faced during the Gilded Age, and here are the four main topics. So let's just jump right into it. Now, after the Civil War, you have the Reconstruction period. And during the Reconstruction period, Congress passed major reforms. But from 1877 to 1900, it was faced with inaction and political corruption. This ended up raising questions of whether or not democracy could actually succeed in a time that was really dominated by the powerful industrial corporations and the captains of industry and robber barons. You had weak government, you had very weak leaders. Rutherford B. Hayes won his election due to a secret deal. Benjamin Harrison becomes president after losing the popular vote, but ends up winning the Electoral College vote. And then you had Chester Arthur, who becomes president after Garfield is killed, but then fails to win his own party's presidential nomination. In a time that was known for corruption, the most noteworthy president of this era is Grover Cleveland. Grover Cleveland maintains a reputation of integrity throughout his presidency. In 1884, he becomes the first Democrat to win the White House in 24 years. He loses his bid for second term in 1888 to Benjamin Harrison, but ends up coming back in 1892. Now, Grover Cleveland's reputation for honesty was really the exception because many government officials routinely accepted bribes. And besides writers like Mark Twain, who gave the name The Gilded Age is the one that named it, political cartoonists expressed their concern about the damaging effects of corruption and big money. And here's one of the most famous political cartoons of the time, known as The Bosses of the Senate, where you have a cluster of businessmen representing the various trusts glaring down on the chambers of the Senate. So I want you guys to take a few seconds, think about answers to these two questions before moving on to your second Let's Think. And here's another political cartoon for you. So what is the meaning of this political cartoon? Take a few seconds, analyze it, really look at it, and then we'll discuss the meaning tomorrow in class as well. Now, we know that the political system is corrupt, and one of the things that made it corrupt is the spoils system. Politicians awarded government jobs to people that were loyal to the political party rather than based on merit. So politicians would award government jobs to loyal party workers with little regard for their qualifications. The political parties and the spoils system were the central components of politics during the Gilded Age. And Andrew Jackson is really the first president to use the spoils system. The political parties create something called political machines. And these political machines were in every single city in the nation. You could not escape it. The political parties would hold elaborate rallies and parades to help get out the vote. But the candidates that were running for presidency never took part of these campaigns, of these rallies, these parades, because they felt that it lowered the reputation of the presidency. The spoils system is really what served as the glue that helped make the parties so powerful. Because the more that they engaged in the spoils system, the more jobs that they handed out for people being loyal to them, the stronger that political party became because people wanted to get jobs. And so they would vote for the person that they were told to vote for in hopes of being paid off at the end. About 75 to 80% of all the people that could vote did vote during presidential elections of the Gilded Age. Now, with a system that is so corrupt, you have the feeling that something needs to be done. So the feeling that the spoils system corrupted government, or at least made it terribly inefficient because the people that were working there were not qualified, prompted a number of prominent figures to promote civil service reform. Now, civil service is a system that includes federal jobs in the executive branch. We know the executive branch is the one that the president, the VP, and the cabinet. In a reformed system, most government workers would get their jobs due to their expertise, and then they would actually maintain their jobs regardless of which political party won the election. So regardless of whether you were a Democrat or Republican, regardless of what party the president belonged to, you would still hold your job because you had the qualifications for that particular position. Reforming the spoils system caused a lot of controversy, of course. Without the spoils system, politicians felt that they couldn't attract people needed to run their parties. President Hayes, Rutherford B. Hayes, which we mentioned before, tried to reform it but failed. And it really took the assassination of President Garfield to make civil service reform a reality. Now, President Chester Arthur, he's the one that becomes president after Garfield is assassinated, signs the Pendleton Civil Service Act in 1883. And basically what it does is it creates a civil service system for the federal government to hire employees on merit rather than on who you know. It also ends up creating a civil service commission, which writes a civil service exam. So people who wanted to work for the government had to take the test, and then depending on how well you did on the test would determine on whether or not you would get a job, not based on your political connections. Initially, this act only covered a small percentage of federal employees, but over time it grew and it continually reduced the power of the spoils system in the federal government. Now, we said that this civil service reform takes place after President Garfield is assassinated. So let's jump into that right now. On July 2nd, 1881, President Garfield is shot by Charles Guiteau in the 6th Street train station in Washington, D.C. He is shot twice. One bullet grazes his shoulder, and the second ends up entering his back and lands right behind his pancreas. Now, Guiteau says that he shot President Garfield because the Republican Party had not fulfilled its promise of giving him a job. He tries to run out of the train station, but he ends up being arrested by a police officer outside. Garfield gets carried back to the White House, and they try to locate the bullet in his back. Alexander Graham Bell, remember this is the guy that invented the telephone, invents a metal detector specifically for the purpose of finding the bullet lodged inside of Garfield. Now, this is pretty genius, but the one thing that they didn't think about was the fact that Garfield was laying on a metal bed frame. So the instrument was constantly malfunctioning because it was on a metal bed. Like Garfield was laying on a metal bed. And because he was laying on a metal bed and it was malfunctioning, it failed to locate the bullet. Now, Garfield does not die immediately. He does end up surviving throughout the summer. And his condition fluctuates, but he ends up suffering from infections, from fevers, and he can't really eat. He can't keep down solid food. In early September, they being his family, decides that President Garfield should be taken to the Jersey Shore to escape the Washington heat. And he ends up passing away in New Jersey on September 19 in 1881. Now, most historians and medical experts believe that Garfield probably would have survived his wounds if the doctors that attended him had been more capable. But unfortunately for Garfield, most American doctors of the day did not necessarily believe in the idea of cleanliness. And they would insert their unsterilized fingers into the wound to try to find the bullet. And one doctor actually punctured Garfield's liver by trying to find the bullet. President Garfield is the second president to be assassinated. We know that Lincoln was the first. President Garfield is number 2, but he is the only president that survived the longest after being shot. Lincoln dies hours after being shot. McKinley, who was the 3rd president to be assassinated, lived only for a week, and the final president that was assassinated, JFK, died almost immediately. So what happened to Charles Guiteau? Charles Guiteau gets arrested, he gets put on trial in November, and he pled insanity. He gets sentenced to death in January of 1882, and he's hanged on June 30 of 1882 as well. So it was very quickly. He was sentenced to death, he gets hung, done. President Garfield's death was instrumental to the passage of the Pendleton Civil Service Reform Act, because the spoil system is what caused Charles Guiteau to really go off the deep end and to feel that he was entitled to a job for his loyalty and his support and not based on his merit. So, we have reached the end. Are you guys able to answer these 6 questions here? If you are, great, I'll see you tomorrow in class. If not, go back, rewatch, and make sure you just get the details. See you guys in class.